What's up? Welcome to a very special Ant-Man sized episode. A half, a .5, a mini episode of Movie Schmovie. My name's Steve. I'm one of the co-hosts, and as always, but this time I'm joined in a car by
Ron
and John. So this is the first time we've recorded an episode of any kind together in several years, and we're doing it in Ronald's car.
On 3 different iPhones and 3 different recordings in the parking lot at Columbia Mall.
This is very exciting.
This is what it is.
Yeah. So we're fresh out of Ant-Man.
As fresh as you can be, I guess,
yeah,
right?
Man. I guess.
Ant-Man and the Wasp. Quantumania.
Yes, say the whole title.
Let's.
And I saw someone saying they were surprised that they hadn't made anything in the marketing out of the fact that the name Ant-Man is in order in the word Quantumania. But the end credits, they actually did have the name Ant-Man come up, and then the other Quantumania letters faded in.
Spoiler alert, John.
Well, yeah, there's the title pops up at the end of the movie. I probably shouldn't have revealed that.
Yeah.
Talking about all the razzle dazzle, man.
So yeah, we just kind of wanted to do this 0.5 episode since we just all saw this huge Marvel movie to kick off the Phase 5, the 31st Marvel movie.
That's insane.
And we're trying to stay away from spoilers, obviously, because of, we're going to put this out as close to the release as possible. But I don't know, where are you guys at? Well, I guess where were we going into it? Like where we've talked about this a little bit on our thread. Let's kind of check in on that real quick before we go.
Mm-hmm. I was tapped out, man. I'm a little tapped out of superhero movies. I've just been seeing a ton of them, and they're in front of me everywhere. They come on TNT. They come on Pluto. They come on, they're on Disney Plus Enhanced. So it feels like I've been kind of inundated with kind of the past movies, but I wanted to see something that felt a little different. So
and you mean beyond just Marvel? You're talking about super, like DC, all of it.
DC,
just
all of it. I'm so
too
sorry.
much of it. Okay.
All of it. Yeah.
I would chip in on that thought and just say franchise fever has been bringing me down a little bit. Just all these plotted out things where there's 5 or 6 movies coming and you're hearing all the news, and even though it's like part of that conversation that we like to tap into for the show, I do sometimes think, like I said before this movie, if Marvel's going to turn into this thing where they just put out these like decent movies with fun parts in them that I enjoy, I don't know where the need to rush out and see them is, and I don't see where the need to have a big conversation about them. Do you know what I mean? Like they wouldn't take up so much of our real estate on the show if there hadn't been this period where those movies were like fun and exciting to talk about and felt like there's something about the zeitgeist. I've been talking with my son a lot about this because he's 15 and he's kind of grown up with Marvel, and he kind of like, he was excited to see this one and he's excited to see Guardians. Like those are movies that he's actually excited to see, but he was noting like that's the first Marvel stuff in a while that he's really felt that like pre-sold in his bones excitement about. And I think I kind of mirror that feeling. Did you guys do your ranking of Phase 4, or are we just going to skip that?
We can go through it quickly. I mean, is this just the films?
I put the shows in my list.
Oh man, I didn't make a list, but
all right.
You can go through yours.
I'll just go down my list, just because we were talking about the beginning of Phase 5 now.
Off of it,
This was my take on Phase 4 from and when I say worst to best, for me, worst is still decent. Like, I don't think any of the stuff they put out sucked in Phase 4. I just think that there was that loss of focus that we're obviously reacting to. Yeah. So I would say, all right, from the bottom to the top, Miss Marvel, She-Hulk, What If, Hawkeye, Love and Thunder, The Eternals, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, Moon Knight, Falcon and Winter Soldier, Black Widow, Wakanda Forever, WandaVision, Guardians Christmas, Shang-Chi, and Werewolf by Night at the top of the list.
Holy shit, all that's Phase 4.
Yeah.
It's crazy when you start listing off and you include the show.
Oh, wait, Spider-Man Far From Home.
Yeah, I was going to say, where's that?
That'd probably be at the top.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that's really good.
No Way Home.
Yeah, No Way Home. Right.
That should be at the top of the list.
It's something that Kevin Feige, has kind of commented on recently about, like, I guess the refocusing of some of the Disney Plus shows and like how they haven't really announced premiere dates for like this year of what they have coming, and that it's kind of stepping back, slowing down, allowing more focus on the quality of these shows, giving them some space to breathe a little bit, because it does feel like even as you go down that list and like listening to you, a lot of the bottom of your list is a lot of the Disney Plus shows.
Yeah.
And I think that's not, even like you said, John, it's like not a really cut on the quality overall, but it does feel like some of those shows suffered from a rush to get out, or not enough space with all this story and world building and characters being introduced. So, if that's their intention, is kind of space it out a little bit more, maybe it's cliche, but quality over quantity, things like that. Hopefully we would do this at phase 5 and rank things. You don't I probably would align with a lot of what you're saying, but like a lot of the Disney Plus stuff wouldn't be at the bottom of the list.
Right.
Because it does feel like, generally, even walking out of the theater, I heard some people talking about the Disney Plus shows because of something that happens towards the end of this movie.
Let's just say a Disney Plus show gets teased in this movie.
And I think that it's, and that makes a lot of sense, because I think they're really kind of pressing this crossover between the shows and the movies. So, I mean, for me in general, without really thinking about the ranking, I do think that a lot of the Disney Plus shows would probably fall down pretty far on my list. I did really like, it's a special presentation, but The Werewolf by Night would be high. I really like that a lot. Is Loki phase 4?
Oh, wait, Loki, I forgot that one.
Yeah, so Loki would be pretty high.
Loki would be pretty high for me too. That would probably be in my top. I honestly, I jotted that list down just today, just because I was trying to think about what phase 4. Because again, having enjoyed some of the things, but not just it's been a lot of like, but not love with all that stuff.
Totally
but I do think Loki would be probably top 5. But you're right that that's still the Werewolf by Night, and I like the Guardians Christmas special, and then Loki season 1. Like, those are the ones that really stand out as the most cohesive, complete things that they did. Like the other shows that I liked, WandaVision, Winter Soldier, Falcon and Winter Soldier, Moon Knight, they all suffered greatly by the time they got to the end of episode 6, or the end of their run, they had sort of spun out. In WandaVision, I really think it felt like that almost should have been a movie. Like, I think if that had been a movie, that storyline with those characters would have probably had the emotional, like, oomph that it needed to have. But by the time it got to the end of the episodes, it was like, well, there was supposed to be a big finale. It felt like they were trying to do something on a TV budget that you need to do on a movie budget. So I think that's a big problem. Ronald, what do you think? Do you think the shows suffer a little bit from that? Like, it's a weird quasi mixture of what you expect from television and what you're used to from the movies?
I've been really hard on the shows, but it's a crazy undertaking to try to connect these things into something that feels cohesive, but also doesn't feel like it's skimping on the money, but you have to be a little more conservative on the money. But there is still a quality to it that exceeds, I want to stop getting in the habit of, like, shitting on something to praise something else.
Right.
But I will say this. There are lots of comic book based TV shows that are not nearly as good as the Disney stuff. I'm not going to say any names. I'm not going to call anything out. But I can tell you unequivocally that this is my favorite movie in the current phase. I mean, it's the only
one we just saw.
The one we just saw?
Yeah.
It's the first movie.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
So one for one.
It's my favorite. It's my favorite in the favorite. I'm saying right now it's my favorite in phase 5. And if you're asking me to compare it to the previous one, it is. So one thing I will say about it is that it is stranger than Doctor Strange was.
Yeah.
And I love that about it. I love that it committed to whatever it was trying to do.
But it was Ant-Man and the Wasp in the Multiverse of Madness. It was much closer to that title than
it
that
was.
movie
It was Dune. It was Star Wars. It was
Star Wars.
But it felt Dune-ish when they kind of ran into some of the the people there. It felt like it really had something that felt unique, man. Like I haven't seen anything like it in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which I think is really important, which is what maybe I know that we've kind of seen people on Earth for quite some time, and space has been like the focus kind of between the fourth and maybe now, but I think this, seeing the current ratings that it has for it, I feel like it was undershot, man. This thing was really cool.
I was thinking about that low Rotten Tomatoes score. And we all know Rotten Tomatoes is deceptive. It doesn't mean that's the grade critics are giving it on average. It means that's the percentage of critics that either gave it a thumbs up or a thumbs down.
In general.
And a lot of those thumbs down are like 2.5 out of 4 or 3 out of 5 stars. Not saying it's horrible, but there's a lot of 1 stars and no stars too. But I don't know. There's so much going on with the critical reaction to this movie that we were talking about a little bit before we saw it, and I almost wish I didn't have that in my head. But in some way, I wonder if it loosened me up because I did sit down. I did sit down thinking, gosh, what if this is the first Marvel movie that really disappoints me that much? Because other ones have been not great, but they haven't been ones I was looking forward to as much as I was this one.
Right. Yeah.
But I like Peyton Reed as a director in this world. I like the cast of characters. I like Paul Rudd in this role. Like Rocket Raccoon and Ant-Man are my 2 favorite MCU characters. So this spring is a big one for me. I sat down and I felt like I was watching a real, not just a real story in this world that I kind of cared about from the first scene, but I thought the stuff they were showing me was cool. It does still have that kind of Marvel CGI murk to some of the visuals, but it's at least imaginative what they're showing you. And about half of the visuals did pop for me, or did feel at least like, I can't tell you what a quantum realm really looks like. So I don't know that this looks fake, but I think on top, it's really about the characters. And this movie has like a good family of characters that I legitimately, the actors are fun to see. I just had warm feelings going into this, and I thought the adventure and the story was solid, and it was funnier than I expected. I really do think those reviews gave me a perspective that was a little bit different. But on top of that, I do think that this one just feels a little bit more like it's part of that, whatever that thing we've been saying is missing. I feel like this movie has those elements of things that I'm curious about how they're going to play out, and things I'm curious about other characters coming into the story that's been laid out or set up or begun or whatever we want to say this movie does for Phase 5.
I think most importantly probably is Kang.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like, you're right. I feel like the early response to this movie definitely kind of softened me up a little bit, because like I was not really like to the moon about this one, except for the fact that it was going to be a bigger introduction to Kang, and I do like Ant-Man and the idea of Phase 5 kicking off, but like I just feel like my concern coming out of where we just talked about with Phase 4 was just like a little bit of bloat, a little bit of weak like storytelling in general, and
Diluting the brand.
Right, exactly. So I think, me personally reading some of that stuff, I didn't really read any reviews. I just kind of went off of a general consensus about there's a couple critics that I read that I really kind of respect and follow regularly that were kind of, cooler on it. And I kind of feel like that helped me a lot, because I don't know, I think my expectation, mainly because of the Kang of it all and kicking off Phase 5, there's a lot of weight for a movie to do that in this MCU, and for it to be an Ant-Man movie.
Yeah.
And if we think about that, it's like beyond Spider-Man No Way Home, which was always going to be this big event, Marvel tentpole. It's kind of crazy to think about where they are right now, where a Doctor Strange film and an Ant-Man film are really the 2 pillars of like the propping up of what the MCU is right now.
Yeah, and where it is maybe going to go.
Exactly.
Right.
So I just feel like that's also just like a temperature check on where the MCU is, that these are the characters that really are propping it up. So going in for me, like, I definitely liked the movie more than I thought I would. I'm probably a little cooler on it than you guys. I just really enjoyed, I love Jonathan Majors. I just, the moments where he really got to dig in, whether it's the scenes with Michelle Pfeiffer or, Paul Rudd, I think those moments where we kind of got to sit with that character a little longer beyond just this idea of this overshadowing figure that people refer to as he, him, whatever. Once you get into that a little more, I thought that stuff was just great. In general, the whole quantum realm, the look of it was fine by me. I think there's like a little bit of like silliness in the movie that I like. A lot of it works, but some of it didn't work for me. And that's kind of, I don't know, like, I guess script stuff. I just kind of fall that. I've been falling towards that a lot recently with some of the MCU movies, which is just kind of wearing me down a little bit, where it's bothering me more cumulatively.
I just want to talk about that script issue, because I do agree that there's moments in this movie where I felt like, okay, this script could have used another polish, maybe in terms of some of the dialogue punch-ups.
Exactly.
But structurally, and in terms of the exposition it provides for some of these bigger things, I thought that stuff was handled really well. Maybe not always the dialogue itself, but just where the reveals were in the movie and how this movie took the appearance of Kang. Technically, we've kind of seen this character before. If you know, you know. And I don't know, I feel like this movie had a lot to do that it did reasonably well within a story that made sense, like exposition that they need to set up for this phase 5, right? Yeah. But it fit within this story. So it felt like a story that was somewhat self-contained, even though they're talking about stuff that's going to be huge going forward. Right. So I kind of had that same thing, Steve. It felt like it was kind of jerking me around a little bit of like, oh, that scene was really cool, and I liked that notion, and I liked that. Maybe there were some jokes that worked for me, but you're right that there was like, even in some of the kind of serious moments, things were written in a sort of basic way where I was realizing, oh, this is working for me right now because this is Michelle Pfeiffer delivering this, or this is Paul Rudd delivering this.
Absolutely.
But you mentioned the scenes too. Like there was some great like scene partnership in this movie. I thought that Michelle Pfeiffer had great moments with several people. I was really glad to see her have more to do. And I think I wish I had the name of the actress that plays Cassie off the top of my head, but I think that she feels like they're setting up somebody who's got that charm and snap and fun quality of a Marvel character that you might want to see more of, you know. So that part I thought was successful. And yes, Jonathan Majors, that's the sort of secret, as like you're wondering like, how does he play? And Kang plays great, and yes, he's very theatrical and he gets to do so much acting, but it doesn't feel like too much.
Yeah, he's just he's a special.
He's really good.
He's special, man.
I think one thing that's really important maybe that we should tell people in terms of whatever King is to be in this phase is that the thing that you waited for Thanos 10 years or you're getting in this movie in one movie, which is really cool. The purpose of this character, the motivations, how brutal he can be, the scope of what he can do. You really get all of that in one movie that you were getting in those little glimpses of Thanos, you know, on the throne at the end of some movies, a whisper here and there about him, a relationship between Thanos and a child, let's say. This stuff you're getting really cool glimpses of who this character is between a certain show and this. You have a good amount of information about this villain. You'll probably find out many, many layers of it because of, you know, his motivations and how far he spans into the world.
Ronald, did you feel that little bit of like excitement that like, oh, they're setting up mysteries about this character, having him refer to what he knows and what's coming, but realizing, oh, they have a plan, even if it's going to be a few years and a few movies, like they're setting up things that they intend to reveal. And I know that's how they get us with these franchise movies, but I actually felt like it felt like I was watching an episode of Lost or something where they're just referring to things that characters are like, wait, what? And there's no answer given yet. But unlike Lost, where they didn't know quite where they were going when they started the show, I really do feel like that's one thing when they announced all these movies, you know, instead this is like leading up to an Avengers movie where Kang is the villain. It makes you realize, oh, this might be the little structure over which we're going to see some of these payoffs for the stuff that wasn't resolved in this.
This is exciting.
And so it didn't feel incomplete at the end of it. I thought that, you know, if the question is how can they introduce a new villain and have him be the villain of a movie where theoretically we want to see the good guys have some kind of a victory, I without saying more, I just think the movie did a good job of threading that needle without making the heroes seem like screw-ups who can't do anything right, and also without making Kang feel like he's a one-and-done joke, you know? So, did anybody have like a favorite moment or character or something that really pops out other than Kang? But it could be a Kang moment.
I mean, honestly, I think my favorite moment in the movie is probably when I'm trying to stray away from a spoiler here, but there's a sequence towards the end of the movie where Kang and Scott are just fighting each other.
Yes. It's like brutal, like bloody.
There's no superhero-ness of it at all.
Yeah.
Like, you know, the idea of both of their powers being drained from them in some way or removed from their tool set in some way. And you just have two characters, two forces in their own respects, just going at it. Like, you know, I think in a movie especially like this where there's tons of CG, lots of set pieces, environments that we've never seen before, you know, when it comes down to a moment where like the central conflict of the movie is like, you know, this idea of keeping your word or like what's loss equal or what is it worth?
Yeah.
Or the sacrifice to what it's worth. to see that kind of collide in just a hand-to-hand fight, which we don't see a lot. You know, you're just blown away by visuals and like flying around and going big, going small, whatever. And that stuff's awesome. And there's some really cool sequences like that too. But I really felt when they started fighting each other, and like, you know, that had the biggest impact on me, and I think that's like that's a compliment to the movie.
And Steve, how often, even in Black Panther, both Black Panther movies, where the climax could theoretically be a brawl that feels that visceral, they always rely on so much CGI that it takes away a little bit. And they corrected that a little bit in Wakanda Forever, but it still was lacking that feeling you're talking about of, oh, Jonathan Majors and Paul Rudd had a fight scene.
Exactly.
Not them CGI, their faces CGI on a bunch of stringy
and like gummy flying around.
Right. It was like an actual like close brawl.
Yeah, I thought that was really well done.
And the notion that technically Scott Lang should be outmatched by Kang is like not something. I've seen so many people talk about that like that's a liability of this movie, but I feel like the movie wears that on its sleeve. Like that's one of the points of the movie is that there's got to be someone better than Ant-Man to take care of a problem this big. Luckily, he's got the Wasp. She had a lot more to do in this, or she had some cool action moments. But no, I think that I like the little family of characters in this movie, and I'm glad we got to see them kind of go on this very, very Star Wars-y adventure. Like right down to the fact that there's even a character who I feel like there might even be lines lifted from Empire Strikes Back with regards to Bill Murray's character and how he fits into the story. There's a trajectory that he's on that's like almost identical beat for beat for a character that's in Empire Strikes Back.
Well, even like Hope when she's got that like hoodie on with the goggles on it. It's like very Jedi, you know, Return of.
There's a thing that
Jedi, Return of.
I didn't want it to be confused with The Last, which there was also a sequence in this when Janet's standing in that when they're all in that open desert and there's like that one ship coming towards them. That kind of looked a little like Last Jedi, that shot across the salt field. What about you? Any standout scenes?
Well, just King. I was going to say something that I've been thinking about a lot about writing styles in the past like 20, 30 years. There's like this realism that's been coming in superhero movies where like essentially what's happened is the difference, the shift in writing is like before every villain was like, I'm the villain, right? And then there was like this refocus where somebody was like, every villain doesn't think of themselves as a villain.
Right, none of them do.
None of them do, right?
Or almost none,
And we've kind of come to this evolution where this character doesn't care. Where it's like, you could be the villain to somebody, you could be it doesn't matter.
He feels like he exists almost outside of good and bad in a way.
It's like all that stuff he doesn't care about. He just cares about this idea that he has. I love that. And it's something that we haven't really seen before. I mean, I really liked it in like kind of some of the Thanos speeches. But this is a different thing. Whatever he has is a little bigger. The scope of what he wants to do feels a little bigger than Thanos.
You're right. It's like it's as if, and we don't really know what it is yet.
We don't.
But it's as if we got all that character development that we got of Thanos in Infinity War. If we got that before we saw any of Phase 2.
Right.
Like, so we're now dealing with a character, not just an idea, and we still don't know what the plan is. I want to get back to the critical response thing, too. Ronald and I were talking about this before you came in, Steve, and I just am curious what you think about this, because I do think this is a major factor in what's happening with those reviews. I think that it's only like the last 10 years or so that popcorn movies like this have gotten critics to somehow buy into them and talk about them like they're prestige movies. Mm-hmm. It's not that unusual for a movie like this to get drubbed by critics, really. What's unusual is that now critics are being much more blunt, honest, harsh, whatever, about specifically Marvel movies. Like someone pointed out that Ant-Man and the Wasp had an 87% on Rotten Tomatoes. Now that movie's a delight. I love it, but it's not critic proof. Do you know what I mean? It's not the kind of thing that you would think of that many critics just loving. And that really got me to thinking, what do you think, Steve, about that, like that fatigue that we've talked about, as fans looking for some spark, something to hook us in? Don't you think that critics reacted in a similar way to Phase 4 of saying like, we were acting like these movies were special, but now we're having to admit maybe we got taken. These are the same B movies, and they're kind of cheesy, and they don't quite connect. Like, and I'm not saying that that's how I feel, but I'm saying critics, about this type of movie. So I'm not that surprised that this movie got such didn't have critics falling over themselves for it. But given the Marvel movies in the past that critics have enjoyed, I'm a little surprised that some of those same critics didn't find more to enjoy about this movie. You know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't feel like this is the problem. Of all the Marvel movies that have come out that might make you worry about the quality control, this is not the tip of the spear for that, for me. Right. So I don't know. I just didn't know if you thought about that.
No, I mean, there's definitely something there. I think it's a combination of kind of what you said about, I don't think that like their enjoyment of the ones that came before Phase 4 or like how those ones had higher ratings really is like a change in how they're necessarily like how they're doing their job in reviewing films. I think that those movies did feel a little different and they did feel a little more special because there simply weren't as much of them. They did feel more event. And you got to also, the other part of this that I think that we have to keep in mind is just the landscape of what even comes out anymore.
Right.
And the fact of like, if you look at the ratio of what's being released and like what is, you know, franchise IP, what is original films, what is straight up Marvel related. Yeah. You know, that ratio, you know, especially post Phase 3 and, you know, the pandemic of it all and what's happening with that theatrical, I think that there's just a change in what they're even seeing.
Yeah.
So I feel like not only has Marvel pumped out more content in Phase 4 than they did like for, I don't know, the majority of 2 and 3, if not all of 2 and 3.
But like more middling content
exactly.
as well.
Yeah. And I think it's just kind of a collision of a real, I mean, call it as it is, I feel, is that there's a quality issue with the Marvel stuff. And again, John listing his Phase 4 rankings, the worst, the best. The worst is still not like horrible.
Right.
It's still a good thing that I enjoy. But when you look at what came before and the highs of those films or those phases, I just think there's a collision happening with, you know, what they're willing to overlook or what they're just genuinely enjoying, because I just feel like in general, like, you know, Phase 4 wasn't that great, I don't think.
Well, it's kind of like if someone invited you to their house and they gave you a decent burger, right?
Yeah.
And they were really fun to hang out with. You would be like, man, this burger is awesome.
For sure.
And then one day you come over and they're giving you the same burger, but now they're being kind of aloof. You'd be like, I don't like this burger as much. This is,
or,
you know what I mean?
Or if I go over once that month and then like I go over every week from that point forward.
Yeah, right. Then they're like, could we make this a daily thing?
The economy of scale for my enjoyment of that burger, it's going to wane after some time.
No, you're right.
And they got the challenge of like, I'm going to add that topping to that burger to keep
true.
Steve interested. Well, that's what they're trying to do.
They're trying to put
Disney
some Quantumania
Plus.
sauce on that burger.
And they're putting the shit series and all these, you know, and they're trying. But I think they've identified the fact that I think there's too much, and I think there's a quality issue. Yeah. But to speak to this film, I do think this movie is better than the numbers reflect.
Yeah.
I do think that I'm very curious what the audience
me too.
score is going to be, the cinema score for this. I think it's going to be one of those inverse things where I think audiences probably will enjoy this more than a critical response, and even the cinema score hopefully reflects that. I would be shocked if it's anything lower than like a B. Yeah. But you know, it's a really fun character, and even the perspective that in the film Ant-Man is in the world, you know, post Endgame, post all this Phase 4 stuff, I think just kind of plays into his importance, you know, and how much people enjoy him, or at least who they think he is.
Yeah. Steve, I told Ronald this, but like I'd read somewhere that Peyton Reed said that like he came to Marvel and said, if we're doing a third Ant-Man movie, I kind of want to do, one that's not a palate cleanser for the bigger movies. And they said that there had been an idea at some point that one of the Avengers movies would start off an Avenger movie, and then the team would get taken out, and Ant-Man would be the only one left to take care of the issue. And they said, what if we just make Quantumania that like, this is an Avengers movie, but he's the only Avenger available. Yeah. And I was like...
Scope-wise,
and I think they kind of did that. But the cool thing is, he does have his little team now. Like, there's 3 of these shrinking and growing people that have different ways of manifesting their powers. But I love that notion. And I really love that, like, it's kind of like, you know, it's Paul Rudd's turn at bat in that way. And I think it's interesting to see that maybe they have set him up to be like, as pivotal as Robert Downey Jr. was before.
An elder statesman of the Avengers.
Yeah, in a sense, right.
Yeah. No, I mean, he's there. He deserves it.
One thing that is a little weird about everything that's happening right now, and this is not...
The fact that we're sitting in a car and we're all kind of sweating.
Yeah. This is not...
There's a Shake Shack right there. Shake Shack right. Speaking of burgers, you guys... Fuck you guys. I'm probably going to get a burger right now.
I want the plant burger before this.
Let's go. There's one thing.
So good. Oh, I was going to say, The one thing that is very interesting is I still don't know what the fuck this phase is.
Is happening, yeah.
Yeah, it's and that's one thing that'll come out of people are still gonna have questions because it's no fault of Ant-Man's. It's just at first, with all the phases, we still knew that we were moving towards something. And we do know that there's a North Star at some point.
Right. The Kang's coming.
But what else is happening? What's the meat and potatoes in between besides Ant-Man? And Ant-Man's amazing, but like...
No, I know what you're saying.
Who are the current Avengers? Or the Thunderbolts coming? What the hell's going on? Like, Where are we? Yeah. Where are we in this world right now?
I think there's a lot of hesitance even to what they're committing to and announcing or like... I think there's a lot. I think behind the scenes, there's like a sense of things being retooled a little, or adjusted a little bit.
Yeah.
A lot of things have come up and changed in even some of the slate that they've announced, and some movies may even be coming off the table in terms of their placement in the phases that they were announced in. I'm looking at you, Blade, but I don't really know.
Where are you, Blade?
Yeah,
Where'd you go?
I feel like you're right. I feel like there's. And that's been the criticism of the phase, and I'm not to kind of harp on it, but it just feels like it was a lot of just content pumping out, get it out. We got to keep people in on it, but like in on what is the question?
Yeah,
the idea that there's going to be a big bad named Kang in this phase, and there's going to be a movie called the Kang. They're saying this information. That's information on paper.
Yeah,
but of what we've seen, whether it's in the theater or Disney Plus. It's like, what is that connective tissue?
Yeah.
What is that line through it all? It felt a lot more clear in other phases, and even of the Infinity, saga, it was much cleaner.
I think it felt clear because it was a simple universe they were working with. But if you think back to those early movies leading up to the Avengers, like the Thanos thing was sort of like something people knew on paper, but it didn't really click in the movies until we got real on-screen Thanos.
Right.
So I do feel like they've got more on the table than it might seem as far as what they've already set up here. But I do agree that like getting that trust back, that it's going to feel momentous. Like this movie felt momentous and interesting to me. I'm hoping this is just the way they feel now again, and that they've kind of shaken off those top of the like we can't do any wrong. Like whatever that middle period is. Because it definitely is like you've said, Steve, it's got to be a collision of different things because too many people are having the same conversation. Even people that like these movies are kind of going like, I don't know. I kind of feel like I'm doing it out of obligation. And to me, Quantumania, that's the little fire that Quantumania proved I can still have in my belly of like, oh no, I'm still sort of hooked in, to this. It doesn't mean it's perfect. But I wonder if it had come out in phase 4, would I like it better than a lot of the stuff in phase 4? And I really do think if this movie came out, I've just saw it. So I don't want to be the kid who just saw it and says it's my favorite movie. But like, I think I would like it better than a lot of the stuff in Phase 4 if I was ranking it on that list with the other Phase 4 stuff. So.
I'm excited. This wasn't my favorite, but it was.
But it's your favorite of Phase 5.
Yeah.
My favorite. It is my favorite.
Hey, you know what? Let's all agree on one thing tonight. This is our favorite MCU film of Phase 5.
Absolutely.
Take it to the bank, guys.
100%.
1 out of 1. They're batting 1,000.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah. So this is promising, man. You see, Kang literally was giving him 3-4 hit combos, reminiscent of his villainy in Creed. Jonathan Majors is a star.
I thought his costume looked great too, or his armor, whatever you want to call it, looked really great.
And there's something like this. This kind of proves to me that all right. This is what I'll say.
Finally,
Paul Rudd is incredible. He's a star. We know that. But I think what I'm looking for right now is the ones, Disney Marvel's kind of made a business of giving us lesser known characters. I think I'm ready for somebody big this phase. I'm ready for a Silver Surfer.
Well, we're getting Fantastic Four soon.
Yeah, Fantastic Four. I'm ready for somebody I'm familiar with from my childhood that I grew up with that I didn't read in like an offshoot of a Civil War or Secret War. I'm ready for a main character, because we have these characters now.
That's kind of what Steve was saying. Is like, they keep mentioning the Avengers and
Yeah.
being an Avenger in this movie, but we don't have a mental image of what the Avengers even mean
Yes.
at this moment in time.
Even if one X-Men comes to the Avengers, something weird like that, like I'd be like, I want them to shake up our expectations, because this feels like crazy. I love the direction it's in. And with the post-credits scenes, you kind of get the scope of what's going on. Give us something crazy after this. That's what I want.
Okay.
So this was a pretty crazy movie. So you're saying keep it crazy.
Keep it crazy, man.
I'm kind of with you. I'm kind of with you.
Keep
Like,
it nuts.
if you keep injecting the craziness with a little bit of heart and a little bit of groundedness, the way that this movie did. Like, there's one insane character in this movie that actually gets some really funny beats.
Yeah.
But also, it's the way they handle that insane character is like kind of what you're saying. It's weird, but with a little bit of something else.
Yeah. Some heart.
And that's just to bring it back to the conversation we've had so many times, in which I think we still, do you still always ice cream? Is that what it was? It was ice cream scoops.
I do owe you guys.
And we've talked about it so many times, but it's just like the stakes of these movies.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a couple moments in this film
Where you start to
even
wonder-
when the trailer
yeah.
came out, we had conversations about, okay, here we go.
Yeah.
There's some stakes. I'm talking like loss of life, not steaks like at a burger spot or anything like that.
Sure, you don't mean shakes?
I might mean
This
shakes.
movie has high shakes
because
in
I
it.
got a lot of peripheral going on here. I just see that
There's a
logo.
whole shack full of shakes right over here.
But yeah, I just feel like, there's I hope they don't lose sight of that also, because part of me, and to echo everything you said on past episodes of the podcast, it's like, you need to be reminded that there are stakes.
Yeah, the story's going somewhere.
it's
That's one of the aspects of a story going somewhere.
And and I think that's something that I don't know. I feel like there's been a presence of it in some of the films and some of the series in Phase 4.
Yeah.
But I don't know if the occurrences are really like driving a lot of the story. But we'll see. But yeah, I thought this was very enjoyable. I thought it was fun. What issues I have with it are pretty minor, just in terms of, the overall experience. I think there's enough there to kind of push me to the positive side for it, for sure.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Kang, man.
Kang.
Jonathan Majors.
Dang, Kang.
Dang Kang. Dang Kang. And it's, I think what happened with this episode that we're recording now, it went from being an Ant-Man episode to a Giant Man
It
episode.
went right. It went from or like this is Paul Rudd at normal human size.
Is that what it is? It's the in-between. It's just like the OG Scott Lang. Okay, got it. So yeah, I mean, that's our post-screening.
I guess we're saying ahead. We're kind of bucking the trend of our critical brethren and saying,
I would say go ahead, man.
Yeah.
If you're looking for,
like a fun family movie that's got some stakes in the sense of a movie like this. I felt the same thing you were saying, Steve, about the stakes, but I felt like this almost felt like it's not the movie to make us to feel really down.
Yeah.
But I do think the suggestion that things can get really bad from here is it's there. You know what I mean? So I would say, if you were wondering if this is going to be a memorable Marvel movie or a forgettable one, this to me feels like a memorable one.
Oh yeah.
all right, cool. Movieschmovie.com is the website. Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania is in theaters now, by the time you're hearing this.
Yeah.
We'll be back next week with a full episode, a 9.5 episode.
Yes.
And we'll get around to required viewing picks from last week, which was mine, which is called The Dry. So,
Ooh, that's right.
that's all I got, guys. As always, you've been our day. Thanks.
Bye.
Now let's get out of this car.
That was fun, man.
Steak or shake? What do you think?